My name is Robert Crease. I am professor of philosophy at Stony Brook University. I'm the chairman of the department right now.
Now, you have been to the G4G many times and written about them. First, let's start with your efforts to popularize or make better known G4G.
Well, I'm a columnist for Physics magazine. For 18 years now, I've written a column called Critical Point for Physics World magazine, which is kind of the British version of Physics Today. That is, if you're a physicist, you get this magazine. So I have a monthly column, and first of all, it gives me an appreciation for Gardner, because I can't believe that people write columns for as long as he did. But I've only done 18 years, but he did almost 25.
Mm-hmm.
And but I'm constantly on the lookout for interesting ideas. The column is called Critical Point, and it's about the philosophical, historical, intellectual background to physics. So interesting aspects of physics that you don't learn by just doing physics itself. So I'm on the lookout for ideas, as I said, and one day George Hart, who was also at Stony Brook, said, "Oh, you should come to this conference, G4G, in honor of Gardner." And I'd read a little bit of Gardner when I was a kid, but I took what George told me was fascinating, so I came to G4G and it blew my mind.
So you didn't come for the math per se. You didn't come for other things. You just came before the sort of the gestalt of the conference.
I came for the play.
The play.
It's the most disciplinarily diverse conference I've ever been to, and the most fun conference. As I wrote in one of the things that I've written, it's a conference. You wonder what all these people have in common, from logicians to magicians, and what they all have in common is that they like to solve puzzles. They like to create and solve puzzles. And sort of intellectually, philosophically, I'm interested in the notion of play and creativity. And so here we have this kind of palette of play going on for 4 days.
As a philosopher and or educator, what do you think the value of play is?
That's a big question, but the play is thinking. Play is play is creativity, and here we have people coming not just to advance their own professional careers, but to figure out how to play better. It's sort of like, again, as I described it in another article, it's like coming to a conference of hobbyists, that all they have is the spirit of being a hobbyist, of trying out stuff, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, and you may not be interested in or even able to grasp all of these talks, but there are many things you pick up that are useful for your own work.
Yeah. Now that you're here, you know that Gardner was a philosopher.
Yes.
And that probably wasn't the reason you came, but now that you've encountered Gardner and philosophy, and of course your background in that is very, very strong, are you thinking that maybe philosophy should be discussed more here? Do you think that is an aspect that is just pushed to the periphery and we just concentrate on the play?
Absolutely. I think philosophy should have a bigger presence here, although maybe in a different form. That is, a large part of Martin's work had to do with pseudoscience and attacking pseudoscience, and many of his books were about. It was actually partly the subject of my talk today. Mm-hmm. He wrote a lot about pseudoscience, and it was important to him to expose and to point out the flaws in pseudoscience. So that was a very important part of his work, and to do that effectively, you have to have a firm grasp of the philosophy of science. So I think that ought to be a bigger part here. And over the years, it seemed to be less and less. There was only my talk and a talk I just heard about pseudoscience here.
When you leave here, what are you going to take back to your students?
Well, several things. First of all, I brought some of my students here.
Oh.
So I brought. Well, I made sure a colleague of mine who's a logician and who likes games and Gardner, and started reading Gardner when he was like 4 years old. I made sure that he came. I also brought a graduate student of mine named Delicia Kamens, who who's been around, and an undergraduate who's very interested in the game of life and develop some elaborations of it. I'm just sorry he didn't get to meet Conway, but they're all brilliant people. So I brought some people here, but in terms of what I take back, well, first of all, I'm teaching a course called Philosophical Engineering, and I say that it's, I tell my students it's everything you should read in engineering class, but don't. And so it's not just how to build things, but how to play with things, the role of play, how play shapes our experience, how engineering projects involve linkages of things, not just objects, but linkages of things. So, and as part of it, I have them build something. They have to design it and build it themselves, and it's an imaginative project. It's sort of like the game Mousetrap?
Yes.
Basically, I have them do a big mousetrap. Each person builds a piece. We put all the pieces together. Last day of class, this flow of energy happens. So one of the things I'm bringing back from this is I run into lots of people who've done something like that, and I borrow their ideas. With Delicia Cammons, who is my TA, we're assembling things to playful devices to bring back that my students will love. So that's one thing. There are other, I have several ideas. Every time I come, I have several ideas for columns.
Mm-hmm.
So not just writing about G4G, but things that I found out here.
Well, I will meet you more in the future, and I'm glad we have this real life example of the success of G4G doing what it's supposed to do.
Yes, absolutely. As I say, it's the most disciplinarily diverse conference that I have ever run into, and the most fun. You know, the key point. One of the key points was here's a Gardner moment. So we get back from Decatur last night, and sitting around drinking downstairs in the bar. And Colin Wright says, "Oh, did you know that the ISS, International Space Station, is about to fly over this area, and we could probably see it from here?" And I said, "How do you know that?" So he shows me the website, and we figure it out. And about a dozen of us run out in front, and we figure it's visible between those two buildings, and then it'll be hidden, and then those two buildings. And sure enough, it appears at exactly the right time, 9:15 p.m., passes between two buildings, then over there. And that's like a Gardner moment when just a little bit of knowledge about the world makes you feel more connected to it and makes you feel like you understand it more and that you appreciate it more. So that's the kind of experience that always happens when I come here.
Very good. I think we should end on that note.
Okay,
Thank you
good.
very much.
Thanks.